Currently, I live in Cusco, Peru, and I am playing paid music gigs. I am a professional musician for the second time in my life, and I have a thriving online coaching business where I have a full roster of one-to-one clients, and I'm currently in the process of launching a group program for three lucky people that want a high touch group program. I turned 50 in 1 month, and I am reflecting on like my last decade. My name is Heather Wild. I am a sales strategist and lead gen specialist for coach, consultant, business coach, whatever, but only for truly purpose driven, high integrity entrepreneurs who want to scale, but don't want to sell their soul in the process. But that's only a little bit of who I am. So, 10 years ago, I was living in a fire hazard apartment with my best friend at the time, and it was a one-bedroom apartment. And this best friend was like my gay little brother. So there was no boinking going on, but we shared a one-bedroom apartment in Atlanta, which caught fire once. We might get to that story, we might not. Um, that's how I started my 40s. I think that I was still doing rideshare driving at the time. No, 2015. Yes, 2015. I was still doing rideshare for Lyft and Uber in the US and working on a coaching business, but had no clue, in spite of multiple high ticket investments, how to actually make sales. And I was miserable. I was so miserable and so lost. And you fast forward to now. Last year, I lived in Mexico for most of the year, and then it was time to not be in Mexico anymore. My intuition was like, it's a lovely place. It's not your favorite place, and so I came down to Peru. I've been here for almost 4 months. Yeah, 3.5 months, and things are really, really different. So, how did I get to such a different place? Um, and also, just to throw in, I had barely traveled outside of the US before 2022. It's now 2025. And I was terrified. I was terrified of traveling outside of the US. I was thought everything was dangerous because that's what we're told in the US. It's the greatest country on the planet, and everywhere else you're going to die, basically. um, I didn't speak any Spanish. I speak a little bit of Spanish now. So yeah, I was really scared of traveling outside the US. So how did I get to where I am now? Lots of therapy, lots of personal growth, lots of up level challenges where I don't know, my 40s were really hard. They were really fucking hard. And I don't think yeah, I was doing everything I could to not make them hard and to grow as a person. I've been on a personal and spiritual growth journey really all of my life, but I started therapy when I was 19. And I say therapy kept me alive, but it was purpose driven coaches and healers who actually helped me make a life worth living. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so dedicated to helping those people be the top performers in their field, the people that everybody knows and everybody listens to, because they're the people that are actually going to help. They're not just going to take your money, right? Um, so yeah, I been in therapy off and on since I was 30. I entered a 12-step program in my 30s to get sober. I wasn't a big drinker back then. Was a daily drug user, and therapy kept me from jumping off a building in my 20s. But it was 12 step that first gave me like actual usable tools. Therapy's come a long way since then. The modality of therapy, I had a great therapist, but it was the wrong modality for me. It was just sit around and talk about things. There was no like um, homework. There was no like, this is how you actually make changes in your life and what have you. But 12 step was the first thing that really super moved the needle for me. And even though there's problems like, there's great things about 12 step, there's problems with 12 step. I don't go to meetings very often. Every once in a while, I will tune into a meeting, usually online. But it was the first thing that really helped. And then I had a lot of like life stuff thrown at me. So when I was 42, I was diagnosed with stage three HER2 positive breast cancer. And that was a slap in the face because I felt completely healthy. And at the same time, my dad was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. And I became his living caretaker. So I was taking care of him while he was in and out of the hospital. And we were trying to advocate with doctors, advocate with the health insurance, fight with the health insurance to get the treatments that would actually help. And at the same time, I was, getting multiple opinions on my diagnosis for breast cancer because they told me I had stage zero. I'd never heard of stage zero cancer. It is a real thing, but at the time I was like, I feel healthy and I can't feel a lump, and you're telling me that I have stage zero cancer. Like, this doesn't make any sense. So it was a little stressful. This is all when I was 42. And so I went through a whole journey of chemo and radiation, and it was miserable. And taking care of my dad, which was also miserable because my dad was definitely a malignant narcissist, but according to one of my therapists, that he had a lot of sociopathic traits. Okay. So there was a lot of mental and emotional and mental sexual abuse that went on while I was living with him, where he would just talk to me inappropriately about sex. And if I set a boundary about it, he would pout and blow up. And, there's a lot of drama. So I had a lot of like life circumstances that really trial by fire, I guess, during this time. And it also revealed to me something else that has been really, really integral to my healing. And that was realizing that my family, before you come for me in the comments, no, I'm not a psychiatrist. No, these people don't have formal diagnoses. But if you know anything about dysfunctional behavior, they had a lot of narcissistic traits. We had a lot of really, excuse me, a lot of really dysfunctional family patterns. And I had to, once I realized that, and once I started studying narcissism, I highly recommend Dr. Ramani on YouTube. Um, she is an actual psychologist, and her specialty is in like dysfunctional relationships and dealing with people on the narcissistic spectrum. That really was, well, first off, it was a kick in the head, because I really had this, even as an adult, when I started to know more about unhealthy patterns and having been in therapy and everything, and I knew my family was fucked up. But this really was like what shone a light, and I was like, oh, now I get it. Now I really, really understand like what's happening. Like there are things from my past with my family, things that they said or did that just made no fucking sense, like no sense whatsoever. And I would go around in circles in my mind trying to figure it out, because I was like, okay, there's something, and it kind of like, I kind of knew, I guess, there was some piece of information that I was missing, because the thing that happened or the thing that was said was just so out of left field. Like it made no sense whatsoever. And then when I learned about narcissistic behavior, I was like, oh, no, it doesn't make any sense until you know this piece of this is how a narcissistic person thinks and operates. And then it was like, oh, okay, it makes perfect sense. So it gave me a lot of peace, but it also my brain was really busy for like 3 years just rewriting my entire family history, because what I thought it was is not what it was. I also discovered evidence for I had, for a long time, I had strong suspicions that my father had sexually abused me, but I didn't want to believe that. And he was very adept at playing the role of this really affable, really likable guy, give his shirt off his back to help you kind of guy. And that was one side of him. So it was very hard, and he had groomed me, from a very young age to believe that he loved me so much and blah blah blah. Um, and maybe he did in his own twisted way, but he definitely molded me to be his caretaker, and everything from a very young age. I knew that there were emotional incest, surrogate spouse things, but I strongly suspected that he had sexually abused me. And after he died, I found evidence of that in the house, in the bedroom I had been sleeping in for 4 years. And this wasn't the bedroom I grew up in. This was the house that he bought after he divorced my mom. And that tilted my world sideways, because on the one hand, I was like, oh, I could stop thinking I'm crazy or that I'm an asshole for thinking this about my dad. But I also had to deal with the reality. And once I had pictures and proof, it, and to be honest, there were pictures before. I just didn't want to believe it. I was like, oh, people take naked pictures of their kids. That's normal. No, maybe when they're babies, but not when they're like 2 and 8. And yeah, it was gross. So that really put me in like a trauma spin. Like I was dealing with his death, which a part of me was very sad about, because it's his father that I loved. But the other part was like enraged. So it was very complex grief. And I found through doing a comedy class, I did a comedy class as a way of like getting out of the house, and I've done stand up comedy like years ago, and but I found a teacher that I thought would be better, and she was way way better than the first guy that I learned from. And through that, I met someone who introduced me to a therapist who does EMDR therapy and eye movement rapid desensitization. I don't know, I can't explain it, but EMDR was really pivotal in helping me process trauma. EFT has also been super, super helpful. I also invested in some breath work with plant medicine assistance. That was really good. Um, and I changed therapists. The first EMDR therapist was really good in a lot of ways and really loopy in a lot of others. Like she would spend 5 to 10 minutes of each session telling me about her problems. It's kind of my fault because I opened the door for it. I was like, I don't think you look like you feel good. And then it became like a thing, which was, very unprofessional on her part. And so I switched therapists. I found through a chance meeting with somebody at the gym, I found a EMDR therapist that lived in another state, practiced in another state, but I was able to do Zoom sessions, and that has been really helpful. And then oddly enough, just moving out of the country. So I had no plans to leave the US. There were things that I loved about the US. There were things that I didn't like about the US. In the last few years, I felt increasingly uncomfortable in the US because I can't drink all the Kool-Aid of any one group. I wish I could. I wish I could, or I think some people don't drink all the Kool-Aid, but they're really adept at pretending to drink all the Kool-Aid and they just kind of keep their private thoughts to themselves. I can't do that. I'm incapable. And the more that I learn about neurodivergence, I'm not diagnosed, but I have a lot of ADHD traits and I have a lot of autistic traits. And the more that I learn about that stuff, even though like I'm probably not going to get a diagnosis, but it helps me to just be kinder to myself because I'm like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. My brain is just wired differently. So that's actually been a big help too. Um, but where was I? I'm moving to Mexico. Oh yeah. So the things I like, things I didn't like about the US. And one of the things I didn't like is that because I am an actual free thinker, because I actually take in information and make up my own mind, just because the conservatives say it, I don't believe it. I'm going to have my own thoughts and opinions. Just because liberals say it doesn't mean that I'm going to believe it. I'm going to have my own thoughts and opinions. And so it became like somebody said this and it was so brilliant. It was like I was too liberal for the suburbs or the outside of Atlanta because I'm from Georgia, but too conservative for Atlanta. And I remember being in this comedy show where like the host mentioned capitalism in his set, and I knew I was in like an ultra liberal part of town. Everybody in the room booed capitalism but me, and I was like, okay, but you're all wearing like $300 jeans that look like they got pulled out of a dumpster and driving like $80,000 Teslas. So, are you really against capitalism? This is before they found out who Musk really was. So imagine that's very different now. But yeah, it was very uncomfortable for me. But I had no plans to leave. But I did realize, so I moved away from my small town to go to school. And then I moved to Atlanta to school in Athens, University of Georgia. Then I went to Atlanta, and then I went to Hawaii, and then I came back to Atlanta. And I was in Atlanta for a total of about 22 years. When my dad got sick, and then I got sick, I moved back to my hometown, and I stayed there for 4 years with my dad from like 2018 till he died in 2022. And then I didn't leave until like almost mid 2024. So the plan originally, and I was doing a lot of healing. Like I had money from my inheritance that I could have like bought a house, bought some land, or at least, put a sizable down payment on it. But I knew that I was in such a fucked up mental place. My dad had died. I had to go through all of his stuff and clean out his house. And if the people on Hoarders are like a 10, my dad was probably at like a 7. Like there wasn't nasty, there wasn't dead animals and all kinds of stuff, but there was just massive amounts of junk to go through. And in the process of that, I found pictures proving that my father was a sexual predator. My father was a pedophile. And and then there was still the part of me that was like, I remember once, a few days after he died, I literally laid down in the I think it was the dining room floor and kicked and screamed like a toddler, screaming, I want my daddy back. I want my daddy back. And, so there was a part of me that very much missed him, that part of me that had been groomed, that part of me that, we want to love our parents, right? And then there was this part of me that was like, he abused you and you have proof now. And so it was a tough time, to say the least. So I just moved into an apartment, and to save money, I stayed in my small town. And ended up living there for 2 years and did a lot of processing. And, my thing was, I kept saying, like, I don't feel competent to make an adult decision right now because I was really just wrecked. Like, there was a period of time when I started having recovered memories where all I could do was just sit on the couch. Like, I got a personal trainer just so I would have like some human contact. And I would go to the trainer, I would get hugs, I would, work out, and I would come home and take a shower. And that's really all I was capable of doing. Like, I was wrecked. I don't know how I didn't harm myself during this time. It was very, very difficult. It was very, very lonely. I had a few friends that I would reach out to. But it just, finally, I realized, I'm like, you're never going to get better if you stay in this town. This town, um, there's great things about the town. It's certainly better than when I was growing up there, but there's all these memories, and I don't belong there. Like, they're a lot of them are very alt-right. A lot of them are Christian nationalists and evangelicals. And that's something that I walked away from when I was 15. I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I feel terrible when I go to church. I don't feel uplifted. This doesn't make any sense. And I left. So the plan was to move to Asheville, North Carolina. And I did. I packed up all my stuff, put everything in storage, moved to Asheville for a month with the intention of finding an apartment. And while I was there, I got this message that I needed to go to Mexico. And I was like, this is like, I believe in intuition, and I've gone through periods in my life where I tried to rely on it more. But overall, like, I'm very much I need to reason this out. I need the pros and cons. I really, this needs to be a home mental thing. And this was like the strongest intuitive, it wasn't even a nudge. It was like a push. It was like, you need to leave the US and you have to go to Mexico. And I was like, this is dumb. I'm not going. I'm having a lot of anxiety. I'm dealing with a lot of depression right now. I've never been to Mexico. I don't know anybody there and I don't speak the language. No, I'm not going. And it was like, source, universe, spirit, God, whatever, had its foot on the back of my neck and was like, no, you're going, right? And I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense, but I will go for 2 weeks just to shut you up. Okay. So I went down to Playa del Carmen. After 4 days, the quality of the food was one of the first things. It was like the food is so much better outside of the US. The quality of the meat, the quality of the vegetables, quality of the fruits, it's fresher. They're more ripe because they're actually being grown like locally instead of imported. And the nutrition value like has to be better. Like everything tasted so much better. And so I decided to stay. And I was like, okay, I'm here. I really don't understand what this is about. I met some really cool people, which was awesome while I was in Playa del Carmen. And then I went to Merida, which is in the state of Yucatan. It was in the northern Yucatan at the Gulf of Mexico. um, and I met some people there. I did some good healing there. There were doctors that I was able to access that even with health insurance in the US would have been prohibitively expensive. I went to physical therapy. I got chiropractic. I worked with online with a fitness coach who did foam rolling, and that was really life changing. My body, especially like my abdomen and like around my left breast where I had reconstruction surgery, the muscles were just like permanently locked. And with the foam rolling, I was able to like get things to like soften. And I mean, my body felt like completely different, which I'm sure helped with my mental and emotional health because when your body's locked up, that's not a good thing. Um, so yeah, so I was in, I think was I still in Playa del Carmen? I can't remember if I was still in Playa del Carmen or I had moved to Merida when the tropical storm hit Asheville, North Carolina. So Asheville, North Carolina is in the western mountains of North Carolina. It's about 5 or 6 hours from the ocean if you drive like due east, right? There is a coastline in North Carolina. This tropical storm came from the Gulf of Mexico. It came from Florida and it went up through the panhandle, like the thin part of the panhandle, through the entire state of Georgia and into North Carolina. And it broke a dam and, fucked shit up, dumped a bunch of rain and spawned 11 tornadoes in the area. And so I was like, oh, I guess that's why I wasn't supposed to be in Asheville. And, I was still dealing with a lot of depression and anxiety. I had a lot of like health stuff. My hair started falling out. And we did a bunch of blood work. We couldn't figure out why it was falling out. Still don't know. My hair was like super, super long. I had been growing it out since chemo because I'd been growing it out before I had chemo. And I was like, look, I'm going to grow it out to my ass. And it was about 4 inches from my ass. And my hair started falling out so much that I was like, well, let me cut it now and cut it really short. And I can save the hair and at least like make a wig out of it or something if I go bald. Which it's not falling out as much as it was, but it's still falling out. I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on with the hair, but that was traumatic. That was like last October. And like, yeah, right around my birthday. Oh my goodness. But yeah, so still dealing with a lot of depression, anxiety, still really trying to get my business back off the ground. Because I was really successful for a couple of years, and then all of the health stuff and moving back in with someone who's mentally and emotionally abusive, and then there was the pandemic, there was all these things, right? It really disrupted my nervous system, and so being in Mexico. Especially like being in Playa del Carmen, being close to the beach, being able to go walk on the beach, grounding with the sand, with the salt water, that was super helpful. And but I was still struggling. I was still, doing therapy, doing EMDR, doing EFT, and but being away from everything that was familiar was really, really good for me. Like on the one hand, it was scary, especially because like in Mexico and in Peru, if you're not in a super expensive area or like a tourist area, um, litter is not. It doesn't bother them the way that it bothers us in the states, and so and because of the extreme weather, the extreme rain, the extreme sun, temperatures, they're not as concerned about keeping their buildings and their sidewalks looking nice because it would cost a lot to maintain them to the standards that we do in good neighborhoods in the U.S. And if you're listening to this in audio, I did put quotes around quote unquote good neighborhoods. But so that was a little dysregulated. That was a little something I had to get used to is walking around in a neighborhood with the bars on the windows. In Mexico, it's because of the winds, it's because of the hurricanes, right? But to me, bars on windows equals like dangerous place, cracked sidewalks, lots of litter, sidewalks that have like plants growing through them and everything. It's like, oh my God, I'm in a bad neighborhood. I'm going to die. But no, so that was one thing that I did have to like calm my nervous system about and be like, okay, other parts of the world, people live differently. Just because it looks unsafe to you doesn't mean that it's unsafe. And if you're a solo female traveler, you do want to trust your gut about things, but you also do want to, be realistic about where you are and the standards for that place, right? But just being somewhere where nothing reminded me of anything has been really, 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 really healing for me. Because, one of the reasons why I was consciously choosing to leave my small town is not only does it just not fit me, I was never meant to be there, right? I was never meant to fit in there, but also it, I mean, just everywhere I went, there were memories of, family or, so-called friends. As I had a lot of unhealthy friends and boyfriend relationships. And I was toxic at the time too, because I was unaware and I was being raised in this toxic environment. So I was triggered. I was manipulative. Most of these people are not bad people. They were just in a bad place. Right. But nonetheless, I have a lot of bad memories of friends and family and boyfriends and stuff. And so getting away from that was good. But anywhere in the US, was going to largely remind me of that. I mean, if I moved out of the Southeast, it would have been, a little different. But I think coming somewhere where the language is different, the buildings look different, especially when you go in the historic areas, which I think is so cool because the small town I grew up in, the oldest building, there were probably some houses that were like 100 years old, but like all of the like most of the buildings were probably built in the 50s or 60s at the oldest, right? 1950s, 1960s. So it's just been really healing to be in a completely different place that doesn't remind me of anything. And it's also been really scary to start over in a place where you don't know anybody, you don't know the culture, I don't know the culture, I don't know the language yet. But to also see that, like, I can make friends and make community, and, within 12 days of being in Peru, I had a paid music gig. I haven't played music for money really since my, like, early 20s, so that's been really cool, and now I have a weekly gig, and I had a new gig at a place last night, and, things aren't perfect. I've also lost at least, I would say, at least 30 pounds. I haven't weighed myself in a while. I know I'd lost at least 20, by the time that I left Mexico, but I was looking at the video of myself playing last night and I was like, whoa, like I've lost a lot of weight. I weighed 210 pounds when I left the US and I'm only 5'2". And I did not feel comfortable in my body. And I had lost a lot of strength and everything. So even without working out and not changing my diet, I've released so much weight. And I think it's because my cortisol and adrenaline levels have come down significantly. And also the food here does not have, it's not processed and the additives that we use in the US. Even the processed stuff that I eat here, I think it's still healthier than the processed counterparts in the US. So yeah, my life looks really, really, really different than it did at the beginning of my 40s. And it's crazy because I really, in my 20s, I was a sex worker. I worked as an escort. I did that for 16 years. I was a daily drug user for most of that time. And I really didn't think that I was going to live past 25. And I've been carjacked at gunpoint. I've been held at gunpoint. On another occasion, I've survived violent attacks. I'm really astonished that I'm still alive. So I figure there must be a reason. So I want to inspire people. I want to talk frankly about what I've been through so that people know that they're not alone. And yeah, so if you're going through stuff, just know that it can get better. Keep advocating for yourself. Keep finding new ways to heal. Um, get you some trauma informed therapy from someone who is good at what they do and that you vibe with. And come talk to me in the comments or send me a DM. Not my not what I do, but I can share my experience, strength, and hope with you. All right.